At 9:32 a.m., on a bright Seattle morning, laughter echoed through the marble lobby of Harbor Tech Innovations, a sound that would soon die in every throat. An older black woman stood near the glass entrance, her silk scarf catching the morning light. She looked elegant, composed, too calm for the chaos that was about to erupt.
Sir, I didn't know.
No one there knew her name yet. They just saw someone who didn't fit. If you've ever watched injustice happen right in front of you and wondered how far people would go before someone steps in, stay with this story. What happens next will shock you. Elaine Carter had walked into that lobby with grace, holding a small box of pastries and a quiet smile. Her coat was cream-colored, her shoes polished. She looked out of place only to people who measured worth by youth and titles. Kyle Benson, a marketing associate, barely 30, leaned on the counter with a smirk that said he'd already judged her. "Ma'am, deliveries are through the back entrance," he said loud enough for others to hear. His co-worker Tina Lopez giggled behind her tablet. "I'm not here for deliveries," Elaine replied, her voice calm, steady. "I'm here to see someone." Kyle rolled his eyes. "Sure you are. Let me guess, the janitorial team." The others snickered. No one looked embarrassed. No one corrected him. Elaine exhaled slowly, her patience unshaken. "No," she said softly. "I'm here to speak with management." That's when Kyle grabbed his oversized iced soda, shaking the condensation off like a weapon. "Management, huh? Then you better cool off first." Before anyone could stop him, though, no one really tried, he tipped the entire drink over her head. Cold cola splashed down her hair, her face, her coat. The sound of liquid hitting the marble was almost musical if cruelty had a soundtrack. For 3 seconds, silence. Then laughter. Loud, ugly, infectious. Tina was doubled over, clutching her stomach. A man in a suit pulled out his phone to record. Someone whispered, "Best prank ever." Elaine didn't move. The cola dripped from her scarf onto the pristine floor, a brown stain spreading beneath her heels. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She simply straightened her shoulders and looked at Kyle with eyes so calm it made him blink. "I'd like to file a complaint," she said quietly. Kyle wiped tears of laughter from his face. "Lady, you don't belong here." The supervisor, Mark Peterson, appeared from behind the security desk, coffee in hand. He glanced at the scene, at the sticky floor, and frowned, not at Kyle, but at Elaine. "Ma'am, you're disturbing the front desk. We can call security if you need assistance leaving." "I need assistance speaking to your CEO," she answered. Her tone was still, even her dignity somehow intact. Mark sighed. "Our CEO doesn't meet walk-ins. Let's not make this harder than it needs to be." "I assure you," she said, "you're the one making it harder." The tension was electric now. Employees gathered near the glass wall whispering. Someone muttered, "She's about to lose it." A receptionist hissed, "You should really leave, ma'am, before this gets worse." Elaine turned to them, her soaked coat clinging to her frame. "Worse than being humiliated in public?" she asked, voice trembling for the first time. "Worse than watching you all laugh?" Nobody answered. The laughter had stopped, but the silence was just as cruel. Mark stepped forward, tone sharpening. "Ma'am, I'm asking you to exit the building." Elaine looked at him, then at Kyle, whose grin was starting to falter. "You'll regret this," she said softly. "Every one of you." Mark smirked. "Is that a threat?" "No," she said. "It's a fact." Through the floor-to-ceiling glass, a black luxury sedan glided into the private parking space marked Executive only. The valet rushed to open the door, and a tall man in a dark suit stepped out checking his watch. Heads turned. Conversations froze. Even Mark straightened his tie. Kyle whispered, "That's Daniel Carter." Elaine's gaze didn't waver as the man entered the lobby. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Deference, respect, fear. The CEO's presence was like gravity. Everyone fell silent. Daniel Carter's eyes swept across the crowd, confusion etched on his face as he noticed the spill, the phones, the tension. Then he saw her standing, drenched, humiliated, still holding her composure like armor. "Mom," he said, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. Every single person froze. The word hung in the space between them, echoing louder than any laughter had moments before. Elaine didn't move. She just looked at her son, eyes soft but unbroken. And in that instant, everyone realized the woman they mocked, laughed at, and poured soda on wasn't a lost stranger. She was the founder's widow, the mother of the man who owned everything they stood in. Daniel turned slowly toward Kyle, his expression unreadable. "Somebody," he said in a low, deadly calm voice, "better start explaining. If you think that moment was shocking, wait until you see what comes next." For a long, unbearable moment, no one in the lobby moved. The air felt heavy, thick with disbelief. Phones that had been recording seconds ago now hung limp in nervous hands. Daniel Carter's gaze cut across the room like a searchlight. His mother stood in the middle of it all, soaked in sticky soda, her dignity shining through the humiliation. Every instinct in him screamed to protect her, but what he felt most in that instant was shame. Shame that this had happened in his company, under his roof, in front of his employees. Who did this? His voice wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. Authority carried in its restraint. Kyle took a step back, his face draining of color. "Sir, I didn't know who she was," he stammered. She came in, acting strange, and Daniel cut him off with a look. "You didn't need to know who she was. You needed to know she was human." The silence that followed was brutal. Tina stared at her shoes, trembling. Mark opened his mouth, closed it again. No one dared to move. Elaine finally spoke. "Daniel," she said softly, "don't waste your breath on them." But he couldn't stop. "Not yet." "Mom," he said, stepping toward her, his voice breaking slightly. "They poured soda on you." She nodded once, and they laughed. Another nod. "Then I think we're long past explanations." He turned to Mark. "Get HR. Now. I want the security footage pulled immediately, and lock every recording device in this room. I don't want a single second of this leaked before I decide what to do with it." His composure was frighteningly calm. The type of calm that made people realize there would be consequences, serious ones. Mark hesitated. "Sir, this might have been a misunderstanding." Daniel's expression froze him in place. "You're calling an assault a misunderstanding." "No, sir. I just meant stop talking," Daniel said quietly, "before you make it worse." He turned back to his mother, his voice softer now. "Let's get you cleaned up." But Elaine shook her head. "No, Daniel. I'm fine. What I want is to stay right here." Her tone carried quiet authority. "I've been humiliated once today. I won't be hidden away in a bathroom so everyone can pretend it didn't happen." Daniel studied her face, recognizing the same resolve that had built Harbor Tech from a rented garage 25 years ago. The employees didn't know that story, the woman who sold her house to fund the company's first server, who taught herself coding at 50, who built the foundation Daniel stood on. They only knew the myth of Daniel Carter, the visionary CEO. None of them realized the company existed because of the woman standing before them, now drenched but unbroken. Mark returned with 2 HR officers trailing behind him. One of them, Rachel Kim, was visibly shaken when she saw Elaine. "Oh my God," she whispered. Mrs. Carter, Daniel interrupted. "You know her. Everyone does," Rachel said quietly. "She's the founder." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Kyle stumbled backward until he hit the counter. "Founder?" he muttered almost to himself. "She's—" Your mom Daniel didn't answer. He didn't have to. The truth had already settled like a storm cloud over the room. He simply turned to Kyle and said, "You have 30 seconds to apologize. Then you'll wait in HR until I decide whether you'll ever work in this city again." Kyle's lips trembled. "Mrs. Carter, I didn't know." "Exactly," Elaine said. "You didn't care to know." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Every word landed like a weight. You saw an older black woman and assumed she didn't belong. You thought humiliating her would make you look clever. You thought kindness was optional. Tears filled Tina's eyes. "Mrs. Carter." I laughed. "I shouldn't have." Elaine looked at her. "And now you know how silence can wound as much as action." Daniel's assistant entered the lobby breathless. "Sir, the media team is on the line. Someone already posted a video clip on social media." Daniel's jaw tightened. Of course they did. Get PR ready. This doesn't go under the rug. Not this time. He faced the entire lobby. "Everyone who witnessed this will stay for statements. No exceptions. If I find out anyone deletes evidence, you'll be terminated immediately." He paused, scanning each face. This company talks about integrity and inclusion. But what I saw today, what my mother lived through, is the opposite. And I will fix it. Elaine finally broke her silence. Daniel fixing it isn't enough. She stepped forward, drenched coat leaving faint stains on the marble floor. "We built this place on values. I remember when there were 5 of us working out of my dining room. We didn't have investors. We didn't have fancy lobbies, but we had respect. Somewhere along the way, that got replaced with arrogance. I came here this morning to deliver a report on our internal culture. I didn't expect to become its evidence." Her words cut deeper than Daniel's fury ever could. The employees shifted uncomfortably, unable to look at her. Daniel nodded slowly. "Then maybe it's time everyone remembers who actually built Harbor Tech." He turned to Mark. "Suspend him. Suspend both of them. I'll deal with you after reviewing the footage." Kyle buried his face in his hands. Tina sobbed quietly. Mark's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Rachel whispered to Daniel, "Sir, do you want us to escort Mrs. Carter to your office?" Elaine shook her head again. "No. I'll stay until every last person here understands what respect looks like." Daniel looked at her with both admiration and heartbreak. "You're still the strongest person I know." "I had to be," she said, a faint smile touching her lips. "You were watching." He turned back to the staff. "Today, you all witness something unforgivable. But you'll also witness what accountability looks like. This isn't going away in a press release. This will be remembered as the day Harbor Tech decided what kind of company it really is. The elevator doors closed behind him and his mother as they stepped inside together. 2 generations, one wounded by prejudice, the other by the realization of what his company had become. The crowd in the lobby stood frozen, the echo of Daniel's words ringing in their ears long after the doors slid shut. The conference room on the 22nd floor of Harbor Tech was silent except for the faint hum of the projector. Security footage filled the screen, every second of humiliation replayed in brutal clarity. No one spoke as the scene unfolded. Kyle tipping his soda, the burst of laughter, Elaine standing still amid the cruelty. It was worse in playback than anyone remembered. Every chuckle sounded louder, every sneer sharper. When the video ended, Daniel Carter didn't move. His hands were clasped in front of him, Knuckles' white eyes fixed on the black screen. Across the table sat his mother, calm but unyielding. Her presence filled the room, not with anger, but with authority earned over decades. Rachel Kim from HR sat beside her, pale and uneasy. Thomas White, the legal counsel, flipped his notebook closed. "We're looking at grounds for termination, civil liability, and potential public backlash," he said quietly. "If this goes viral, and it already is, it'll define us." Daniel finally spoke. "Then let it define us the right way." His voice was low but steady. "This isn't a PR issue. This is a moral failure." Elaine's eyes didn't leave the table. "Every laugh in that video had a cost," she said softly. "It cost us our credibility. It cost them their decency. And it almost cost this company its soul." She looked up at Daniel. "We can't just fire people and move on. We have to rebuild something better from the inside." Kyle and Tina were escorted into the room a few minutes later. Their faces were drained of color. Kyle's hands fidgeted against each other. Tina's eyes were red from crying. The door closed behind them with a dull click that sounded final. Daniel didn't waste time. "You've seen the footage," he said. "You know what you did. Now I want to hear why." Kyle swallowed hard. "It was stupid," he said. "A prank gone wrong." "I didn't mean—" "Don't," Daniel interrupted. "Don't say you didn't mean it. You meant to humiliate her. You thought it was funny." Kyle's eyes darted toward Elaine. "Mrs. Carter, I swear, if I'd known, you'd have treated me differently," she asked. "So respect depends on knowing someone's title." Kyle had no answer. The silence pressed down on him like weight. Tina spoke up, voice trembling. "I laughed because everyone else did. I know that's not an excuse, but it's the truth." Elaine leaned forward. "And that's how cruelty survives. Not because of one person's hate, but because of everyone else's silence." Rachel shifted uncomfortably. "We can proceed with termination," she said, glancing at Daniel. "We'll also issue a company statement, confirm leadership's involvement." Daniel shook his head. "No press statements. Not yet. We talk to our people first. Every employee needs to understand why this happened and what it means. We fix the culture, not just the optics." Thomas looked up from his notes. "You realize that means taking this public internally. Some will see it as weakness." Daniel's voice hardened. "Owning your failures isn't weakness. Pretending you don't have them is." Elaine watched her son with quiet pride. "You've learned faster than most leaders ever do," she said. "But don't stop at apologies. Accountability means action." Kyle's voice cracked. "What happens to us?" Daniel didn't flinch. "You're terminated, both of you. Effective immediately." He paused, then added, "And before you walk out, you'll attend one final meeting this afternoon. With me and HR. You'll listen to the message we deliver to the rest of the company. You'll hear how your actions changed everything. Consider it your last lesson here. Tina nodded through tears. Kyle didn't. He looked at Elaine one more time, desperate for forgiveness she wasn't ready to give. I wish I could take it back, he said. Elaine stood. So do I. But wishing doesn't undo harm. Only learning does. After they were escorted out, Daniel exhaled, rubbing his temple. This isn't about two people, he said. It's about everyone who stood there and did nothing. Rachel nodded. 12 employees were in that lobby. Only one tried to intervene. Elaine looked at her. Then we start there. We teach them what courage looks like when it's uncomfortable. Daniel glanced toward the window where the skyline stretched across the horizon. We'll hold an all-staff meeting. No scripts, no lawyers. Just truth. Later that afternoon, hundreds of employees filled the virtual call. Daniel appeared on every screen, flanked by Elaine and Rachel. His tone was firm, but calm. This morning, he began, my mother was assaulted in our lobby, not by strangers, but by our own people. I've spent the last few hours asking myself one question. How did we let this happen? Faces on screens shifted. Some looked ashamed. Others just afraid. This isn't about one bad act, Daniel continued. It's about the culture that allowed laughter instead of intervention. It's about how easy it's become to forget empathy when the person in front of us doesn't look or sound like us. Harbor Tech was built on innovation and integrity. Today, we failed both. He stepped aside slightly. Elaine faced the camera. Many of you don't know me, she said. I'm Elaine Carter. I helped start this company 25 years ago. I believed in building something human. What happened today reminded me that progress without compassion is just arrogance in disguise. The chat window filled with quiet apologies, hearts and messages of support. But Elaine didn't let them off easily. Don't type apologies, she said. Live them. Speak up next time. If you see someone treated as less, say something. That's how culture changes. When the call ended, the building was quiet again. Rachel turned to Daniel. That was powerful, she said. Painful, but powerful. Elaine smiled faintly. Pain is the teacher we ignore until it's the only one left. Daniel nodded. Then let's listen. That night, he drafted a planned mandatory empathy and leadership training, an anonymous ethics hotline, a third-party audit of internal bias. Elaine reviewed it the next morning, adding one final note in the margin. Every laugh costs something. Let's make sure the next sound that fills this lobby is respect. When Daniel read her words, he realized that his mother hadn't just been humiliated that day. She had become the catalyst for everything Harbor Tech needed to become. The reckoning had begun, not with anger, but with truth. And that was something no video could ever erase. 3 months later, Harbor Tech looked the same on the outside, glass steel and precision lines that reflected Seattle's gray skies, but something had shifted inside. The silence in the lobby was no longer uncomfortable. It was purposeful, thoughtful. Where laughter once echoed cruelly, there was now conversation, genuine and human. Elaine Carter had become a familiar presence again, not as the humiliated woman from the video that had circled through internal emails, but as the quiet force behind the company's rebirth. The Integrity Initiative, as Daniel Carter had named it, wasn't a slogan. It was a system-wide reconstruction. The first step was mandatory bias and empathy training, not the performative checkbox kind, but real confronting sessions that forced people to look inward. Employees sat in small circles, stripped of titles, talking about the moments they stayed silent when they shouldn't have. Some cried. Others couldn't speak at all. Elaine attended every first session, sitting in the back, listening. Her presence alone made the air heavier. Her story, a living reminder of why they were there. Daniel, meanwhile, overhauled the company's reporting infrastructure. Anonymous portals were built into every department dashboard. HR received direct reports in real time reviewed by a new external ethics board chaired by Rachel Kim. "We can't trust a system that hides its own failures," Rachel said in her first address. "Transparency isn't optional anymore, it's policy." The culture shift wasn't smooth. Some employees resisted whispering that the company had gone too far, that people are afraid to joke now. Elaine heard about it, of course. One morning, she stood at the end of a hallway outside the design team's workspace and addressed it directly. "You should be afraid," she said evenly. "Afraid of losing your humanity. Humor is welcome here. Humiliation is not." The room went quiet, and something about her tone made the message sink deeper than any corporate memo could. Kyle Benson's name came up often in conversation. After the firing, he had vanished from Seattle's tight-knit tech scene. A rumor reached Elaine's desk. He was volunteering at a youth mentorship program in Tacoma, helping teens from underprivileged backgrounds learn coding. Some saw it as guilt. Elaine saw it as growth. She didn't reach out, not yet. Redemption, she believed, was something earned quietly, not broadcasted. Tina Lopez wrote to HR 2 months after her termination. The email was short. "I'm working with a local nonprofit helping women re-enter the workforce," she wrote. "I wanted to thank Mrs. Carter for what she said that day. I've stopped laughing at things that aren't funny." Rachel forwarded the email to Elaine without comment. Elaine read it twice, then smiled softly and closed her laptop. At the corporate level, Daniel implemented new mentorship programs specifically for women and people of color in tech. He created cross-level partnerships. Junior engineers paired with senior leaders, project managers paired with interns, ensuring everyone learned how to listen downward as well as upward. In his speech, launching the initiative, Daniel said, "Innovation isn't just about machines. It's about the people who build them and the humanity we code into our culture." The initiative spread beyond HarborTech's walls. Local tech companies started asking to model similar programs. Reporters began writing cautiously optimistic pieces about the company's transformation. One headline read, "From Scandal to Standard HarborTech's Rebuild of Respect." But for Daniel, progress wasn't about press coverage. It was about walking through the building and sensing that the temperature of the air had changed cooler, calmer, better. Elaine created a new department under HR called the Human Dignity Council. It wasn't about compliance. It was about conscience. Members were nominated anonymously by coworkers for acts of integrity, empathy, or courage. Some were janitors who defended interns. Some were interns who corrected executives. Each month, one name was selected not for praise, but for sharing their story company-wide. "Stories change people," Elaine said in her first council meeting. "That's how I survived this long in a world that tried to silence mine." Her words began echoing through the culture. The company's internal newsletter featured essays from employees reflecting on what they'd learned. One entry read, "I realized I wasn't the villain, but I was the chorus that cheered the villain on. That's going to haunt me for a while." Even Daniel found himself learning. One afternoon, he sat in the cafeteria surrounded by junior staffers for a discussion on leadership vulnerability. A young developer asked him, "What was it like seeing your mother humiliated in front of your own company?" Daniel paused, choosing his words carefully. "It was the worst moment of my life," he said. "But it also showed me who I'd become, a leader who didn't know what was happening under his nose. That changes now. Every door in this company is open, including mine." Elaine watched her son navigate the sessions, the policy updates, the endless meetings. He had grown into a leader not because of success, but because of failure. One evening, she found him alone in his office, staring out at the city lights. "You've done well," she said quietly. He shook his head. "We're just starting, Mom. Culture doesn't change overnight." She smiled. "No, but it changes when someone decides it must. And you decided." By the end of the third month, Harbor Tech felt like a company reintroduced to its own conscience. The new reception team greeted visitors with genuine warmth. The security staff received specialized training from a consultant. Elaine personally selected a retired civil rights attorney who now specialized in corporate empathy. Even the building's art changed. A mural replaced the sterile white wall behind the lobby desk. It showed hands of every shade and age working together to assemble gears forming the company's logo. Beneath it, a simple inscription read, "We don't just code machines, we code values." Employees stopped hurrying past it. They paused, read thought. That was all Elaine had wanted to make them think. She would often stand at the far end of the lobby, unnoticed, watching the small pauses. To her, those moments were proof that Harbor Tech was healing. In a meeting with Rachel and Thomas one morning, Daniel outlined Phase 2, expanding the Integrity Initiative to community outreach. Elaine listened, nodding. "We started by changing our code," Daniel said. "Now we teach others how to do the same." Elaine reached for her coffee, eyes bright. "Then maybe," she said, "the day I walked into this building dripping in soda won't be remembered for shame, but for what it started." Daniel looked at her, a quiet smile forming. "It already is, Mom," he said. "It already is." A year later, the morning light poured through Harbor Tech's glass walls, just as it always had, but the lobby no longer felt like a monument to wealth and innovation. It felt like a living space, human, imperfect, and aware. The same marble floors that once reflected arrogance now carried the quiet rhythm of respect. Employees didn't lower their voices when Elaine Carter walked through anymore. They greeted her with warmth, with recognition, with gratitude that didn't come from fear, but from admiration. She had become more than the founder's widow, or the CEO's mother. She had become the company's conscience. The lobby wall that once gleamed with a sterile logo now displayed a mural that caught everyone's eye. It showed a circle of hands, young and old, dark and light, working together to assemble gears that form the company emblem. Beneath it, engraved in brushed steel, were the words Elaine had chosen herself. "We don't just build technology. We build humanity." Every visitor stopped to read it. Some took photos. Others just stood there for a quiet moment, as if remembering the lesson that started it all. Daniel Carter had insisted his mother speak at the company's annual leadership summit. He introduced her simply, the woman who taught me everything I know about building something that lasts. Elaine walked onto the stage in a navy suit, her hair silver against the lights. The room, filled with more than 300 employees and partners, fell into silence. She didn't read from notes. She didn't need to. When I first came to this building last year, she began, I wasn't recognized. That used to hurt. But over time, I realized it was the greatest gift I could have been given, because it showed me what we still needed to learn. Respect doesn't come from knowing who someone is. It comes from knowing who you are and choosing to treat others with dignity, no matter their role, their color, or their age. People listened without breathing. Some who had been there that day couldn't meet her eyes. She wasn't scolding them anymore. She was freeing them. I've seen this company make mistakes, she said, but I've also seen it choose humility over pride, progress over excuses. That's what rebuilding looks like, not perfection accountability. She paused, looking at the younger faces in the crowd. For those of you just starting your careers, I want you to understand something. You'll work with people who frustrate you, who challenge your patience, who don't look or think like you. That's the point. Growth doesn't happen in comfort. It happens when you stay in the room and keep listening. The applause that followed wasn't polite. It was emotional. Daniel watched from the front row, pride softening his expression. He had spent the year turning the Integrity Initiative into a model program across the tech industry. The company's inclusion index had improved by nearly 40%. But for him, the true progress was personal. He had learned to lead by listening, not lecturing. After her speech, Elaine didn't linger backstage. She walked through the audience as people approached her, some to shake her hand, others to thank her quietly. A few just looked at her and nodded as if sharing an understanding too deep for words. She stopped near the back where a new employee, a young woman in her 20s, stood frozen with tears in her eyes. I watched the old security footage and training, the woman said softly. I just wanted to say, it changed me. Elaine smiled gently. Then it served its purpose. Outside, the Seattle rain had begun to fall soft and steady against the glass. Elaine watched it for a long moment. The city moved on, as it always did. People hurrying past umbrellas, colliding buses, sighing at red lights. But inside the lobby, time seemed slower, more deliberate. Respect, she thought, was a habit, one you had to practice every single day. That afternoon, Daniel joined her for coffee in her office. It wasn't a CEO's office anymore. It was shared space filled with team photos, handwritten thank you notes, and the quiet hum of belonging. You realize you've become a legend here, he said, half teasing. Elaine shook her head. Legends are stories. I'm still here making sure we don't forget why this story began. Daniel leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. You know, sometimes I wish that day had never happened. She looked at him with kind but steady eyes. No, you don't. If it hadn't, we'd still be building machines and calling it progress. Now we're building people too. He smiled. You always know how to end an argument. I'm not ending it, she said, sipping her coffee. I'm reminding you, it's not over. The company continued to grow that year. New contracts, new technology, new hires. But what people remembered most wasn't a product launch or a stock milestone. It was the change they could feel. Conversations were kinder. Meetings ended with gratitude instead of blame. Feedback was direct but compassionate. People noticed when someone was left out and pulled them in. It wasn't perfect, but it was human. Near the end of the year, Elaine retired from her advisory role. At her farewell gathering, Daniel presented her with a small plaque. It read, "To Elaine Carter, the heart that taught Harbor Tech how to listen." She laughed softly when she saw it. "You should have led with that 30 years ago," she told him. When she left the building, for the last time, as an executive, she paused in the same lobby where it all began. The marble shone. The air was warm. The receptionist, a young man who hadn't been there during the scandal, looked up and smiled. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Carter. Heading out early?" "Yes," she said, with a knowing smile, "but I think you'll be fine without me." As the elevator doors closed behind her, the mural glimmered in the fading light. Respect, she thought, wasn't a policy or a campaign. It was a legacy, a choice carried forward by every person who decided to see another human being as equal. And as long as that choice lived inside the walls of Harbor Tech, her work was never truly done. In the end, the story of Elaine Carter wasn't about a scandal or a single act of cruelty. It was about the transformation that followed. What began as a moment of humiliation in a corporate lobby became a reckoning that changed an entire company. Elaine walked into Harbor Tech that morning expecting a meeting. Instead, she uncovered the truth about the culture her son was leading, the blind arrogance that had grown in the shadow of success. But through her strength, grace, and refusal to stay silent, she turned pain into purpose. Her quiet dignity exposed what power often hides, that progress without empathy is hollow, and innovation without integrity collapses under its own weight. Daniel Carter's journey mirrored that truth. For years, he thought leadership meant efficiency metrics and control. Watching his mother drenched in soda, surrounded by laughter, shattered that illusion. He learned that real leadership isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about being the most accountable. By facing the ugliness within his own walls, he became the kind of leader who builds trust instead of fear. Together, mother and son rebuilt Harbor Tech from the inside out, one hard conversation at a time. They replaced compliance with conscience slogans with sincerity and policies with purpose. A year later, Harbor Tech wasn't just a company that made technology. It had become a place where people were seen, heard, and valued. The mural on the lobby wall wasn't decoration. It was a reminder of what it cost to learn the meaning of respect. Elaine's story proves that even in the most modern environments, humanity must come first. Machines can be programmed, but people must choose. And every choice to speak up to, listen, to treat someone with dignity, writes the code of who we are. The lesson is simple but profound. You don't need power to make change. You need courage. When you see someone being disrespected, your silence is participation. Speak up. Defend the person who's being dismissed or mocked. And if you're the one who's been hurt, remember Elaine's strength. Don't let humiliation define you. Let it refine you. Respect isn't something we demand. It's something we demonstrate again and again until it becomes culture. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that kindness still matters in a world too quick to judge, then help us keep these stories alive. Subscribe to the channel, share this video, and be part of a community that believes stories like Elaine's deserve to be told. Your support gives us the power to keep creating meaningful content that inspires change, compassion, and courage in everyday life.